You're about to listen to a BBC podcast, and maybe it's one I had a hand in. I'm Tammy Walker, and I produce podcasts for the BBC. My role is to give new and diverse creators a voice with the opportunity to build a career. That's the thing I love about podcasts. You start with just a good idea, but then you have the space to see where it goes. And doing that at the BBC means we can really run with the best stories while developing the most unique audio talent. So if you like what you hear, why not check out the huge range of podcasts we've got on BBC Sounds?
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Podcast. I'm Amy Canavan, and as we record, the Premiership has paused for the winter break. It's not often that you get a chance to catch your breath in Scottish football, so we're taking the opportunity to reflect on the past few months and are publishing mid-season report cards for all 12 top flight teams to tell you all you need to know about where they are and how they got there. And this episode is dedicated to the side currently sitting in 8th place, Aberdeen.
Nicky Devlin scores! It's incredible from the Aberdeen defender!
Flicked on by Barmiowski's in this time, he shoots and he scores! Barmiowski! Yet again for Aberdeen!
Just evades him and then the strike comes in. Oh, it's wonderful! What a strike from Angus MacDonald!
This is the Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Joining me to chat all things Dons is former Aberdeen goalkeeper and captain Joe Lewis, and Aberdeen fan and sports lawyer Erin Grieve. Thank you so much for coming on, guys. How are you both?
Really good, thanks. Yeah, good.
Good, thank you.
It's always nice to be on with a former player, Erin.
I know. I was quite excited when I saw who it was.
Rightly so. Plenty of excitement to come, we hope, and plenty to get through with Joe and Erin. But first, let's quickly remind ourselves of Aberdeen's season so far.
Chance here for Young, pulls it back and O'Reilly strokes it into the net and the champions will win yet again here in Pittodrie.
Deutsch again, and it's in the back of the net.
McKenzie, it's in, it comes off the underside of the bar and Jack McKenzie scores what will surely be the winning goal for Aberdeen here at Ibrox.
We're trying to get some points back in the league. Obviously we've had a difficult start, so no, we're really pleased that we've got 3 points and started to take us up the team.
Oh, is in 1-on-1 with the keeper to make it 6, which he does.
Watson with a touch, Watson with a strike. Oh, that's brilliant.
There's no excuse. We need to start picking points up when we know that, and the players know that.
Oh, Duke's away, it's got to be! It is! Your Sokler clearing behind, controls on the head, it's Esther Sokler and he scored! Esther Sokler doubles Aberdeen's lead, and it is Aberdeen 2, Eintracht Frankfurt 0.
Drops Tavernier's way, he shoots and scores!
I can't ask any more from my players there today. We came down here and we went toe-to-toe with them. We tried our best and we just fell short at the end today.
The game is done and dusted in Dingwall. Aberdeen fans are absolutely delighted. It's Ross County 0, Aberdeen 3.
Honestly, see that today, it's like that's why you enjoy being a manager at Aberdeen Football Club when you've got fans like that.
There's a lot to squeeze in just over a minute, so I'll try to summarise the Pittodrie club's season up to this point as best as I can. Barry Robson's side currently sit 8th place in the Premiership with 22 points after 6 wins, 4 draws and 8 defeats. The season started in August with 2 draws and a defeat in the league. They also lost to Hacken in Europa League qualifying. They dropped into the Conference League, produced some memorable performances in the competition, but did fail to qualify from the group despite a 2-0 victory over Eintracht Frankfurt in their final game. Back to domestic matters though, and after losing to Hearts and Hibs at the start of September, they saw out the month with 3 victories on the bounce, including a 3-1 win over Rangers at Ibrox. A last-minute Leighton Clarkson winner over Hearts at the beginning of December eased the pressure on manager Barry Robson after a string of poor results, and they made it to the League Cup final, but ultimately lost 1-0 to Rangers. My goodness, Aberdeen have crammed plenty in there, and that's despite playing the joint lowest amount of league games so far. Erin, let's start with yourself. If possible, what's one word and why would you use that to describe the season so far for the Dons?
It has been a roller coaster. We are, up and down. I mean, games like that Hearts win, brilliant. We hadn't come back from going behind to win for a very long time, and that was huge. The win at Ibrox, brilliant. We were really good in Europe, got to a cup final. There's also been some not so good moments.
Just even that little run through, Joe, it felt like a roller coaster sort of going through it. 1 minute the tone's high, the next minute you're having to bring it down a little bit. That is a roller coaster is a very pleasant word to use for it. Is that perhaps been the issue for Aberdeen? Has it been just a little bit too inconsistent a season so far?
That is it, isn't it? It's so inconsistent, and it's I don't think Aberdeen fans can ever just get ahead of themselves and enjoy the moment, because you just know something around the corner is going to bring you back down to earth pretty sharply. So I think hopefully you can lay the blame at the European schedule, travelling a lot and packing. There's been so many big, huge games actually in the first half of the season already. So that hopefully you can lay the blame at that, and going forward now with a bit more of a clear run, although we've had a couple of games called off now, which has been very disappointing really, because I was hoping we'd go forward and we'd have sort of one game a week or the odd midweek game in the run through. And the lads can get a bit more time on the training field, a bit more information from the manager, and just get that consistency which they've been striving for. It's
that stop-start nature, isn't it, Erin? And then how tough is that being a fan? And Joe sort of says it, and it's quite hard to hear. You can't ever quite get ahead of yourself. You ever quite can't enjoy the moment perhaps fully, because who knows what's going to hit you just next.
Yeah, we don't have many wins on the bounce. So you win a game and it's really exciting, and then suddenly it's not. We beat Hearts and Frankfurt in the space of a week. That was a nice week, and then went to the League Cup final. So yeah, it's been busy as well. And actually, with all the postponed games, we're playing something like 10 games before the end of February, plus potentially, hopefully, touch wood, another Scottish Cup game in February. So we're not actually getting that kind of post-Christmas out of Europe break that we might have expected, because of all the piled up fixtures. Absolutely.
The hectic times are still going to keep coming. Let's go back to the beginning of the season. So that there's going to be European football of some form. It's going to be the first sort of time for Barry Robson to have a fresh season, a full season potentially under his belt. What were the expectations coming into it, Erin?
I did not think we'd get much out of the group at all. It was brilliant. Europe was great this season. The trips were good. The support was excellent. And we actually could have, although I suppose if games mean something when you think they might not have done, you can't guarantee what the results would have been, but we should have won the game at home to PAOK and practically had that won. We could have been Helsinki at home. We could have actually potentially gotten out of that group. I think we did ourselves proud in Europe. 2 away draws and beating Frankfurt, most people wouldn't have expected that.
That European run, certainly one of the highlights of the campaign so far, Joe. But then on domestic matters, what were the expectations? Everyone always says, right, Aberdeen have to be aiming for third. Was that still very much the case at the beginning of this season?
They should be, aiming for that as a target, especially with what that brings you European-wise this season. But I think you just have to look at what happened with Hearts with their European campaign. They ended up sacking the manager because they couldn't deal with the schedule. They couldn't deal with the backlog of games, the amount of huge games that were coming up. I think we can learn a bit of a lesson from that, hopefully. And as hard as it is, and it's probably easier for me because I'm not at the games week in, week out. I'm not in Pittodrie all the time. I'm at games sporadically, watching them all on TV. But I'm watching from a bit more of a distance, so my emotion probably isn't quite as much as the fans that are there week in, week out. But I think we have to be patient. There is a long way to go over the season. We've got a lot of games to catch up, and it has been very frustrating because, like we said, there's been just sort of anticlimax after anticlimax throughout the whole season. Even go back to the very start when we had Hacken, we 2-2 away. We're bringing him home with a draw, and just the life just drained out of Pittodrie. I was at the game, and it's a huge anticlimax. You get to the League Cup final, everything that's sort of all the expectation, all the build up, and just a big anticlimax again. And there's been, don't get me wrong, it's not been all negative. There's been some real good games and great performances within that. The win at Ibrox, the win at home to Frankfurt, just after beating Hearts as well. So there has been some moments, but like I said, they've been few and far between. The inconsistency is something that's so frustrating for all Aberdeen fans.
Joe mentioned patience there, Erin. Now, I know you've been on the Scottish Football Podcast a few times. Where is the levels of patience with Barry Robson these days?
Oh,
a sigh can speak a 1,000 words, can't it?
The Ross County win has... I think we're game by game, surely, at the moment. The Hearts win was really important. As you said, Leighton Clark, a late winner. I think for the team, important. We had, I can't remember the number, but it was a lot of games where if we'd gone behind, we had failed to win. It was like a big record and it was not good. So that is positive. And then the Frankfurt win was good. We came behind to beat Livy, obviously the cup final in there. And I think after that, things looked possibly slightly better. The St Mirren loss was poor. We were absolutely terrible. And I think had potentially that been the last game before the break, it might have been different. But the Ross County game, I think, potentially restored a little bit of faith. We played about 4, which was lovely. And I think we are probably on a game-by-game scenario whereby if we were to go out of the Scottish Cup, you would have to think that it would be time for a change. We've got a really tough run of games afterwards. And I do accept we don't want to be changing manager every season, but we also want to be finishing third. We want to be competing for cups. I think there is still definitely a lot of pressure on.
Joe, Erin says a sort of game-by-game basis there. Now, that's not easy for the fans. It's also not easy for the club, and it's certainly not easy for Barry Robson. How will he have handled the last few months or so, last few weeks?
I'm sure he's found it really tough. He first came in, we get nine wins in a row, or it's something ridiculous. A great start to his managerial stint at Aberdeen, and this is always going to come. He's a young manager. He's a very inexperienced manager, and he's going to make mistakes. As we all do at every level, but especially as a new manager, you're going to make a lot of mistakes. Now, I think the frustration has been he's possibly been a little bit stubborn with, certainly the back three. I think he changed it, obviously. He changed it sporadically during games, but I think what's also not helped that is there's been so many games, there's been very few training sessions. And when you have that many games, you have 2 games a week and you're travelling a lot, you don't get a lot of time on the training pitch. So maybe that might be one reason why he was reluctant to go to the back four, because he's not had enough time to work on it with the lads. But you shouldn't have to work too much on the back four. Players play that their whole lives. It's very rare, really. You see, a bit more at the moment, but you see teams play a back three. A back four is what everyone's used to. And I found really with when I was playing at Aberdeen and we fell into a back three with Derek for a period of time, that we literally fell into it. We were struggling a little bit, and the personnel forced us into it, and it worked, and we stuck with it for a period of time until it doesn't work, and you go back to a back four. So I think that's probably what fans want to see. I think people can accept mistakes, can accept the poor decision, the poor substitution, or whatever. They want to see the learning, and not a stubbornness to not change and to be adamant that what's working. I know as a manager you have to believe in your processes and believe in what you're doing, but also you have to learn. You have to adapt quickly. And as a new manager, I think Barry's going to have to learn to do that a bit quicker, and hopefully he will. Because for me personally, I would give him time, because you don't want to keep going through these cycles of a new manager. Give him a year. It's not quite work. Well, it's not going to work, because every time you get a new manager, they want new players. You've seen the amount of players we brought out in the summer. You brought in, I think, 13 players. Possibly more. Some of them aren't going to work, so you maybe get 8 that work. Okay, well, you've got 5 that don't, so you need to get rid of them. You need to bring in another. It takes 2 or 3 or 4 windows to really get some consistency. And if you keep changing the manager, you just set yourself back 6-8 months, which is obviously not going to help the club. And I think there's a small amount of pain. The pain we're going through now as Aberdeen supporters, I think, for it to mean anything, we have to stick with him, and we have to believe in what they're trying to do. But the supporters want to see something back as well, and they want to see performances like they did against Ross County, and they want to see the gaffer making changes and learning. They don't want to see sort of Groundhog Day.
That's it, Erin. Groundhog Day's a great way to really put it, because it's that kind of precarious position, isn't it? That, right, do you change the manager again, which Joe said, and you touched on it yourself, you don't want to be doing that every season, because then how can you possibly build any sort of consistency? But at the same time, at a club like Aberdeen, success has to be delivered pretty sharpish.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I don't want to say that the fans expect or feel entitled to, success, but we got 3rd last season. We have signed a lot of players. We are a club that financially is doing okay. We should be, I think, more consistent. I don't expect us to win every single game, but I also don't. How can you go to Ibrox and win 3-1 and then you're losing at home 3-0 to St Mirren? I'm not saying St Mirren are actually doing very well, but we were atrocious in that game. There's just games where you think, are these the same players that played last week? I think there is an element of definitely the in-game management, I think, has caused some concern. The Pout game, we were 2-0 up, and that game should have been won. All you have to do is see it out. I think Polvara had cramp and needed to come off fine, but those 3 changes killed it. And, that was difficult to watch and see because, and it's very easy to say, I wouldn't have done that, I would have, made these changes. But I think that has caused some concern. Some of the team selections, the refusal to move to back 4. Angus MacDonald's barely getting game and he's absolutely brilliant. Vinny DeZown, we haven't seen. Who knows what's going on there? So I think that causes some confusion with the fans, and then we lose a game and it becomes very difficult. And then I think as well, every time that kind of happens, you probably lose a little bit of kind of faith with fans. But the Ross County win was important, and hopefully, as Joe says, we've not had a huge amount of training time. So this winter break might actually be useful for a change, although I do think the winter break, when the weather's perfectly fine to play football and we'll have games put off in February, no doubt it's pointless, but hopefully we'll get some training time in, and then if we can get through the Scottish Cup, bit of confidence, hopefully pick up some points, because we are actually, if we win our games in hand, we're 4th. And obviously it's a big F, and games in hand don't count for anything, but we are 4th if we win our games in hand. So things aren't maybe as terrible as they look if we can start actually picking up some points, but we will have to do that soon.
There we go. There's a positivity coming back into this podcast.
4th, yeah. A couple more, we're 3rd.
There we go. Let's keep on the positivity train. Joe, I know, well, you'll certainly know better than anyone that the lack of training, is certainly lack of time on the training pitch, rather, won't be beneficial to the players that came in the summer. But out of that large list that did come in, who's impressed you the most, do you reckon?
Well, for me, the most important player for Aberdeen, obviously apart from Bojan, is Jamie McGrath for Aberdeen. I just think he gives you so much. He can give you goals. He's an all-round midfielder. He can play in any midfield role that you give him. I just think he oozes quality, and he's someone who can create stuff for us as well, which we've not really had. I wouldn't even say he's necessarily number 10, but he can play in that number 10 role, and we've not had really a massively creative 10 in that role for a long time. Really, we've probably missed that. So I think for me, Jamie McGrath has been huge, and if he stays fit, he will be a big part of Aberdeen going forward and finishing the season hopefully strongly.
You're nodding away there, Erin.
He is good.
He absolutely is. And Joe mentioned Bojan Miovski. We cannot have an Aberdeen podcast without mentioning him. How reliant are Aberdeen on Miovski, and how dependent that he does not go anywhere?
He is going somewhere at some point, obviously, which is fine. That's players move on, and he is very, very good. I don't think we are. I don't think we should feel as though we are entirely reliant on him. You've got a squad of 11. It's not one player. I think Duke's actually been quite good recently. Sockler, I think he scored, was it Frankfurt? Yeah, good, really good goal as well. So hopefully gives him a bit of confidence. Bojan has definitely been a level above last season. But actually quite a few of the players look... the Ross County game, Leighton Clarkson looked outstanding. And I thought he was probably the best signing we'd made last summer, and then just didn't look maybe as good. I think Nicky Devlin is a brilliant signing. I think he is really good, and I think he'd be lovely at right back if we moved to back 4. We have a lot of good players, and I think it's just about getting them playing together properly, gelling together properly. And it's true, if you're limited on training time, you're travelling a lot, it is difficult. But I think we need to find maybe what our best 11 is and our best formation is, and try and actually stick with that. That's how we did that when we went on our 7 in a row. We won, exceeded a goal last season, which got us 3rd basically. And we did that then, and it was quite nice. You looked at the team sheet every week and it's the same. Lovely, good.
There we go, a bit of consistency.
Yeah, it is. I mean, obviously there's players, deserve an opportunity. Someone comes on and plays really well as a sub, they get a start, I understand that. But I think the players kind of need to know what's going on, and I'm not sure kind of, chopping and changing significantly every week. If we can get a solid 11, the most important thing is winning games.
Erin Grieve, Joe Lewis, thank you very much for joining us on the Scottish Football Podcast mid-season report card for Aberdeen. And thank you for listening. And remember, we'll have a special episode every Premiership club throughout the winter break. So make sure you follow and you subscribe so you don't miss out on any of them. Until next time, bye-bye.
Just a quick word to say the Scotland Rugby podcast is now available every Tuesday. Join me, Andy Burke and Tom English for everything you need to know about the world of Scottish rugby. Just head to BBC Sounds and subscribe to the Scotland Rugby podcast.